10 things you didn't know about airplanes. 10. The mysterious triangle symbol over your seat. When you board a modern jet aircraft, you're probably looking for your seat number and for the nearest emergency exit. If you look more closely, you might notice a small triangle over your window. That's not a secret society symbol. It's a reference mark for the flight crew. There is a triangle at the front or leading edge and back or trailing edge of each wing. The center of the wing is ideally the center of gravity of the plane for balancing the controls. Imagine balancing a long tray with a glass on it on your finger. It's easiest if the glass or downward force balances the upward force from your finger. So if the flight's not full, a flight crew member might ask you to move between these rows to distribute the load for easier control of the plane, which translates to less drag and better fuel efficiency as well. 9. The flange sticking out of the wing. While you're waiting to leave the gate, you're probably staring out the window at the wings that are going to carry you off this earth. On some aircraft like the A320, you might notice some metal stubs sticking out of the middle of the wing like a sore thumb. No, that's not for lifting the plane. This is part of the evacuation system. If the plane is forced to land somewhere that you can't use the stairs or the terminal boarding bridge, the crew will deploy inflatable chutes from the emergency exits. But if you use one of the overwing exits, you'll have to step out onto a slippery metal surface. That little stub will guide you safely off the wing without stubbing your toe. 8. The hum when you board the plane. Have you ever noticed that there's an omnipresent drone when you're waiting for the last passenger to board the plane? The engines aren't powered up yet, but something is running. The engines aren't powered up yet, but something is running. The APU is what provides electricity to the plane temporarily between the time the plane unplugs from the terminal until it is ready for takeoff. The APU is usually a small turbine that powers a generator for electricity and a compressor for air pressure. 7. Tomato juice. Do you find yourself ordering a tomato juice when you're on a plane? Ever wonder why you suddenly crave a salty vegetable drink that you wouldn't give a second glance to on the ground? It's the same reason you think airline food is bland. Everything on board a plane is conspiring against enjoying the food. First, the noise of the engines dulls your ability to taste sweet things. Food scientists at Cornell found out that sound levels at 85 decibels, the same level as airplane engines, reduce the effect of sweetness on taste buds. And that fan over your head is blowing air that is much drier than you're probably used to at home. On top of that, as the plane climbs to cruising altitude, the pressure inside drops. That pressure drop affects your sense of taste too. 6. Opening window shades for landings and takeoffs. I bet you thought the window shades were installed on planes so you could sleep during long flights. But then the flight attendant asks you to open the shade before takeoff and when they're going to land. The shades are there to give passengers control over their own environment, but safety takes priority over comfort. If something happens to the power on board, the only light besides the illuminated arrows to the exits will come from the windows. 5. Winglets. Airplanes are always a tug of conflict between the thrust of the engines and aerodynamic drag. One big source of drag is something you might not see unless the temperature and humidity are just right. Have you ever noticed little swirls of mist trailing from the wingtips? These little whirlwinds tug at the tips of the wings, as the smooth layer of air flowing over the wing that gives it lift breaks away. Those little winglets sticking up at the end of the wing stop the vortex from forming, which reduces drag and saves fuel, which saves you money. 4. Side stick. Back in the day of the first planes, pilots were known as stick and rudder men, steering the plane by the power of their arms and legs pushing on control cables. Those planes were much smaller and flew much slower than your modern jet though. Commercial aircraft are designed with electronic systems that take fingertip commands from the flight deck to massive ailerons that would dwarf that first balsa wood plane at Kitty Hawk. These fly-by-wire systems are controlled using a side stick that looks like the joystick from a computer game, giving today's pilots an ergonomic replacement for the battling that old steering column. The side sticks are actually linked together so the pilot and co-pilot can both roll and pitch the plane. There is a button to choose which pilot is in control. It's got a few more buttons, including a push-to-talk button for talking on the radio and another for switching the autopilot on or off. 3. Bleed air system. When the plane reaches cruising altitude, it has to keep enough pressure inside for people to stay alive. Without pressurized air you'd soon be sounding a little drunk, before falling asleep as your brain is deprived of oxygen. Now to fly at these rarefied heights, part of the design of any high-flying airplane is how to keep the air flowing. One source of the pressurized air on jet airliners is called the bleed air system. It is only a small percentage of the air blasting through the jet and is controlled to keep a comfortable atmosphere in the cabin. 2. The eye level indicator on cockpit window. Pilots come in all sizes, and just like your car, planes have adjustable seats for them. And just like you might use the hood ornament as your reference when you adjust your car seat. And mirrors, pilots have a reference for pilots to make sure they're in the right spot to see their controls and outside. It's called the eye level indicator, and it's just a small knob on the cockpit window. While the pilot operates the seat adjustment levers, he or she keeps their eye on the little red ball on the indicator until it lines up with the white ball, so that 50% of their view covers outside the window and 50% on their instruments inside. 1. The hole in your window. Since cabin pressure is so important, you might think a hole in your window is a good thing, but if you look closely you'll see every window has one about the size of a strand of spaghetti. That hole lets the pressure between the cabin and the air between the panes equalize. Like your house windows, the layers insulate from the extreme cold of high-altitude flight. But unlike your house, airplane windows have to deal with large changes in pressure as the air climbs and descends. There are actually 3 layers in an airplane window. The inner pane is plastic and just protects the glass from scratches. The middle pane has the small hole that lets the air between the panes expand and contract, but still provides insulation. If you didn't have the middle pane, you'd be looking through a layer of ice as the moisture in the cabin air condenses on the cold outside glass.